In this day and age, what motivates somebody to do things the old-fashioned way?
I think the older I get, the more I'm interested in preservation and what that really means. It's certainly about preserving that style of horsemanship, and the roping and the good stockmanship is really important to me. And it's grown from there to preserving handmade craftsmanship in general. I think that we're seeing a resurgence in people being interested in handmade crafts, no matter what it is, whether it's furniture or rawhide braided gear or anything along those lines. I think that there's a real return in society today to quality items like that.
And in our modern society, are those techniques being improved by technology or not?
I would say it's certainly possible, because having a good string cutter where you can cut a good quality string, a really consistent string, is certainly a benefit, without a doubt. But, some of the best braiders in the world are from South America, and their history and tradition for it runs deep down there. And they were, not using string cutters to cut their strings, probably even still, maybe not using a lot of string cutters down there. And
All that and more on this episode 495 of the Working Cows Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. It's Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows Podcast. Very excited to be joined today by Scott Gore. Scott is a guy that I've appreciated from a distance for a long time with his work of rawhide braiding and rawhide riettas and all those kinds of things. And we're going to talk to him today about how he got into it and about the love for the craft and what are his motivations for it and the usefulness of these tools and what makes them better than even some modern implements. So really looking forward to this conversation and sharing it with you. I do want to let you know that there are openings in 2026 for sponsorship of the Working Cows Podcast. If you are a sponsor and you are looking for a way to get your word out to a nationwide audience and even an international audience of forward-thinking agriculturalists, farmers, and ranchers, I'd love to partner with you. So head on over to the contact us page on workingcows.net and drop us a line, and we'll get back to you and figure out what we can do to help you get the word out about the good work that you're doing. But now, here is my conversation with Scott Gore. Scott, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows Podcast.
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, longtime appreciator of your work at a distance through Facebook Reels mostly, but yeah, I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I kind of just want to understand it a little bit better about what you're doing. So I guess where I'd like to start is, how did you get started in the rawhide braiding and all that?
Sure. Well, when I was about 5 or 6 or so is when I kind of got started braiding. Rawhide came a little bit later, when I was more towards my high school years. But funny enough, growing up in central Kansas, our neighbors actually used riettas and some other braided rawhide gear. And that's the first place that I ever saw it. We'd go up there and help them brand calves and work cows in the fall and things like that. And I just seeing that inspired me to get started. And I was just immediately fascinated with it as a little kid. And that progressed to, like I said, doing a little bit of rawhide with some pre-cut lace that was, store bought. And then I was saved up my own money in high school and bought my string cutter, and it allowed me to kind of progress further to cut rietta strings and things like that. And it's just taken off from there.
Sure. I'm always fascinated. I would associate rawhide and riettas and all those things more with a buckaroo type tradition. And I associate that with more of the California influence and going farther west in the United States, and the farther east you go, the more that dissipates. Does that match with your understanding?
I would agree with that. I think today we're kind of seeing it spread. It's still, like you said, more prevalent in the West, of course, and people who kind of adhere to the California traditions and that kind of thing. But I think we're seeing it grow kind of worldwide. I have people, in the East. Almost every enrollment for my online braiding courses, I see people from the Eastern United States who will take my courses, as well as around the world. I have uh, students in England and all over Europe and places. So I think it's a really cool thing, like to see it grow like that.
And do you have a sense of, when you were younger and had neighbors in central Kansas, you said, is that right? That were using
Yes.
Urietas? Do you have a sense of where the preservation of that tradition came from for them, or any understanding there?
For them specifically, I think it was they took a interest in horsemanship and were attending a lot of Peter Campbell clinics and Buck Brannaman clinics back in those days, and I think that's where it kind of sprang from. And then from there, over the years, it just progressed to where, you might have seen a pair of braided reins early on, and then you saw, Rietas being used at branding time, and it just progressed from there for them.
And so Peter Campbell was the name you mentioned there, I think. Of course, I'm familiar with Buck Brannaman, but is Peter
Yes,
kind of that same generation, kind of second generation after Ray Hunt and some of those guys? Is that where he came
he
from?
was.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. And kind of in your neighborhood, or where was he mostly working?
I think he was based in southern Wyoming, from what I understand. I never attended one of his clinics myself, and unfortunately, he was gone by the time I was able to have done that. But I think his influence was quite strong among people who are interested in good horsemanship.
Sure. And so for you personally, then, has the rawhide and the braiding been part of preserving that kind of buckaroo tradition? Is that intentional in your mind?
It is, I think the older I get, the more I'm interested in preservation and what that really means. It's certainly about preserving that style of horsemanship, and the roping and the good stockmanship is really important to me. And it's grown from there to preserving handmade craftsmanship in general. I think that we're seeing a resurgence in people being interested in handmade crafts, no matter what it is, whether it's furniture or rawhide braided gear or anything along those lines. I think that there's a real return in society today to quality items like that. And it's certainly become a large focus of mine to help perpetuate that.
Yeah, certainly. So you mentioned there that you got your string cutter when you were younger. I had this thought earlier. I was wondering, has rawhide braiding, has it gotten better with better equipment? Has some of the improvements in equipment helped it get better than it was maybe in bygone eras?
I'm not sure what I would say about that. I would say it's certainly possible, because having a good string cutter where you can cut a good quality string, a really consistent string, is certainly a benefit without a doubt. But some of the best braiders in the world are from South America, and their history and tradition for it runs deep down there. And they were, not using string cutters to cut their strings, probably even still, maybe not using a lot of string cutters down there. And so I think that it's certainly a benefit. I think we have wide access to good quality tools to help improve our work today, but not necessarily. I think it has a lot more to do with, you know, how you handle the string and the rawhide and how the hide is prepared than it does the tools themselves.
Yeah, and I think one of the videos of yours that prompted me to reach out to you was one where you talked about the process, right? And then you even talked about, you cut it down, you cut it into strings, and then you run it through another tool to bevel it, and all these
Hmm.
things, and just some of those things that you don't even think about, all the steps, and the fact that a bevel makes it a better braiding, product, and some of those things. So I guess the question then for the South American guys, are they going through that same process just with maybe not as much of a manufactured tool to accomplish it? Are they getting that same bevel and some of those things on those strings before they go to braiding?
They are, yes. In order to, really braid quality items, you have to go through that process of making a good quality hide, that's number one. And from there, handling the moisture content of rawhide is the most important thing to get a good consistent string and consistency in your braiding. So going through that process of making the hide and then getting the moisture content in that hide right where you can cut an even string, very consistent string, and then maintaining that moisture content throughout the braiding process is really what lends itself to the most quality work. And there's no bypassing that. As with a lot of handmade crafts, you have to go through all the steps in order to achieve satisfaction there.
Yeah. Yeah. So have you traveled, and seen rawhide braiding in other places and learned from other people and how they do it?
I've not been to South America yet. I do hope to go down there and study with some braiders one day. I think that would be an amazing experience. But I've certainly traveled the country and seen it in different areas, and it's amazing to see it, kind of making a resurgence right now, I feel.
Yeah. I Let me see which direction I should go here. So, what makes good rawhide? You talked a little bit about the fact that moisture content and all those things. One of the things that really kind of struck me is one of the things I've learned through this journey on the podcast is that the original beef in this country and the presence of cows in this country in a commercial way was more about a hide trade than it was about a beef trade.
Hmm.
And now beef kind of tends to be the thing that we're after more than anything. And then hides are almost, at least to my understanding, my perspective, hides are almost a secondary, almost awful OFFAL, almost a waste product that
Yes.
doesn't always get used. Is that
Hmm.
accurate as far as where we're at today in your understanding?
I believe so. And to get good quality rawhide, obviously you have to go through the right steps while you're making that hide. But before that even starts, the health of the animal is paramount. If the animal wasn't healthy, then that hide probably wasn't healthy, and that really can affect the quality of the rawhide that you get. So it goes right back to that, to the health of the animal before you even start.
Yeah. And I, I've heard older cows tend to make better rawhide. Is that true?
It can be true, but it's not necessarily the case. That's definitely kind of the old school line of thinking. And there's a lot of factors, the health of the animal being the biggest one there again, as to whether that can be true or not. The old thin cow, if she went down of dehydration and things like that before she died, then that hide's probably going to be more brittle than one that was in better health towards the end of her life. So that those things really play more of a factor than kind of your stereotypical, things I believe.
Yeah. So walk me through the process. The ideal process for you, from on the hoof to in a bozal or riata or whatever.
Sure. So to make a good quality hide, like I said, you want to begin with an animal that was pretty healthy, and then I'm going to use the liming. What I use the liming method to make those hides, and what that process is where I take that hide from the animal. I then put that in lime water, hydrated lime, like you use in your garden, or even masonry lime can be used. And I'm going to leave that hide in there until the hair starts to come off. And that is dependent upon the temperature. It can take anywhere from a couple of days to a couple of weeks, depending on whether it's hot or cold outside. Once the hair is coming off, then I'm going to push all of that hair off with a flat metal bar or something like that. It comes off very easily. I'm going to put that hide back in water with vinegar. That vinegar washes that lime out and counteracts it so that it doesn't affect the hide negatively. Then I'm going to pull that hide out of there and I'm going to stretch it. And once it's stretched, I'm going to flesh it, make sure that I get it as clean as I can, and I'm going to let that hide dry. And when it's dry, that's when you have rawhide. That hide is basically just the skin of an animal with the hair removed, is what rawhide is. It's not been tanned into leather or softened. From there, when I'm ready to use that hide, I'm going to put it back in the water tank and allow it to take on some moisture. Once it's taken on a bit of moisture and is soft enough to where I can cut it up with a blade, I'm going to cut that up into a long string that's probably about 5/8 of an inch wide, maybe 3/4 of an inch wide. And from that, I'm going to then process it down into the strings that I need for whatever project that I'm working on. Hackamore strings are going to be a lot smaller than Rieta strings and so forth like that usually.
How long is the process from beginning to end?
It really varies depending on the hide and the project that you want to make. I would say in a Rieta, for example, you've got somewhere, 40 to 60 hours in a Rieta by the time it's completely finished.
But as far as like from animal on the hoof to cut into strings to make a Rieta, how long is that process?
There again, depending on the temperature, if it's good springtime weather, it might only take you 4 or 5 days to make that hide fully, and then you're ready to use it. If it's in the wintertime like it is right now, I've got a hide out there in the barrel and it's frozen solid. I just, there's nothing I can do about it. That's the weather we're experiencing right now, and I don't have a heated place to put it inside. So it's going to delay my process pretty considerably until we get some warmer weather, unfortunately.
Yeah. And then talk to me about the process of actually cutting that hide into strings. Again, my limited understanding is that it's kind of a spiral cutting and trying to make as long of a string out of that hide once it's dried and it's rawhide as possible. Is that right? That you kind
Correct.
of cut it. Yep.
Yeah, it depends on the project there again that you want to make. If I'm going to be making smaller things like hackamores, for example, then I might just cut that hide into circles that are kind of relevant to the thickness of the hide in a certain area. So I might take a big circle out of the middle of the back where the thickness is kind of all the same and is really your best quality rawhide. And then I might take a circle out of each hip and each shoulder and kind of break the hide down that way. Now, if I'm going to do Rietas, then I'm probably going to just cut that entire hide up, just round and around, like you said. I'm going to take my draw gauge, set it on 3/4 of an inch, 5/8 of an inch. I'm just going to cut around and around. I'm going to end up with 200 or 300 feet of that wide string that I can then process into my Rieta strings. So once I've cut it up into that long string, I'm going to then pull it through my splitter, and that machine just takes it all down to one even thickness, clear throughout. Then I'm going to go back to my string cutter and cut the string for width. 1/4 inch, for example, on some Rieta strings, maybe a little bit narrower. Pull them through there, cut my string for width, then move over to my beveler, take the corner off of my string, and then from there, you're ready to go ahead and braid.
Sure. Okay, so similar. My son's gotten into tooling, leather tooling, and sounds similar. Where there are certain parts of the hide that are going to be more desirable, and some parts that are kind of flankier that are or less useful. Is that
definitely?
Yeah. And so, what is there? Just some inevitably, kind of like everything, some waste in the process, or does that get used some other way?
A lot of it will get utilized for smaller projects and things like that. The biggest thing that you're going to see with waste is if you've got knife cuts. If when you were skinning, you ended up with a lot of knife cuts in your hide or something like that, you've got to stop and trim those out as you go along when you're cutting that long string. But typically, we're able to use almost all of the hide, and that's really an amazing thing. It's kind of the ultimate form of recycling in a way.
Yeah, for sure. So what would you say? What are some of your most indispensable pieces of rawhide gear?
Of rawhide gear, well, I would say Rietas because I love to rope with Rietas. And that's really my favorite thing to make above anything else. And so that's it for me.
Sure. Talk to me about the economics of it. How does this work as a business? Is it you kind of have to set up the courses and have some level of passive income out of that to make it work, or are there people making a living full time braiding and selling rawhide products, and how does that work?
For me personally, I do make a living from my business braiding rawhide, but it's kind of like you said, everything else comes into it. The social media has been a big one for me, not only to promote my business, but to generate income. And then selling the courses as well. I'm doing a lot of in-person classes and teaching on the side as well. All of those things I love to do. I love to teach people how to do what I love to do and help preserve the craft as we go along, like we were talking about before. So all these things just work together for me in order to create a sustainable income.
Sure. Yeah. And let's talk about some of the other gear, some of the other rawhide gear, as far as like actual pieces of, tack and those kinds of things. What all, do you like to use? I mean, I guess the answer is probably everything, but what it like headstalls, bozels, and all these kinds of things. I just want to understand your understanding of the advantages of them, what is better made out of rawhide, maybe what's better suited to be made out of something else, I guess.
Sure. Well, for me, like I said, Rietas is definitely my number one thing. And aside from that would be bridle reins. I love bridle reins because I love to ride bridle horses and I love to rope off bridle horses. So that all works really well together for me. I'm not
And
a
when you
huge
talk
fan
about
of,
bridle, sorry to interrupt, but when you talk about
no, go
bridle
ahead.
horses, you're talking spade bit type bridle
Yes.
horses. Is that? Yep.
Yep, definitely. Um, to me, there's nothing better than branding calves roping on a bridle horse with a rawhide riata. I think if I could do that every afternoon for the rest of my life, I'd be a happy man. But no, if I had a perfect world, I'd gather horses horseback in the morning and I'd go brand calves in the afternoon. That'd be the deal for me.
Yeah.
But no, I love those two items for sure, and I like riding in a hackamore too. I do enjoy that. For me personally, I like to use a leather hackamore. I braid a lot with kangaroo leather when it comes to hackamores, and I really like that. I think that they just have a nice feel and they're really comfortable for your horses to wear all day long. And so I kind of gravitate that direction. I make a lot of rawhide hackamores too, but for me personally, riding my horses, I gravitate towards a kangaroo hackamore. It's just a really nice material to work with.
And what step in the process, because a finished bridle horse, of course, is not wearing a hackamore, right? So what step in the process for you where does the hackamore come in?
For me, I start my horses in the snaffle, and I'll ride them that way until I'm pretty comfortable with them before I'm going to move over to the hackamore, and so that's where it then comes in for me before I move on to to reining in the bridle.
Yep, yep. And the two rein is hackamore and a bridle together. Is that right?
Correct.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, understood. So how long or how do you care for rawhide tack?
So the main thing I think is to kind of keep it in a good, um, in a climate controlled environment. I feel like is a really important one. I try not to leave my gear out in the barn a lot. I like to bring it in the house with me where it's in a climate controlled environment, away from the mice and things like that could possibly chew on it. For whatever reason, they'll go after that rawhide gear. And so we try to avoid that as much as possible. If you can keep it away from the mice and the dogs, it'll last for a long time, especially if you don't get it rained on a lot. And the only thing that you really need to do to condition it is when rawhide starts feeling a little bit dry, whether it's your rietas or your reins or hackamores, whatever you're using, just take a little bit of Rawhide's rawhide cream and put a coating of that on there. Maybe let it set in the sun if you got a nice warm sun to let that kind of soak in the rawhide cream, and it'll just bring it right back to life. It'll recondition it, add some moisture to it, and you're good to go.
Huh. So I've seen videos of guys pulling rawhide or rietas through a board, and I think they were using lard. Maybe is that traditional?
Yeah, there's a lot of recipes and things out there to condition rietas with, especially kidney fat and things like that. It's kind of your old school. I personally still use the Rawhide's. I think that that's a great product and it has everything in it that I need. So from the time I make that rieta and I'm ready to start using it, it's getting Rawhide's put on it. For the break-in process, cleared it through when I need to condition it as I've been using it.
Yeah, talk to me about that. We've got a rawhide rieta, but it's just been braided. What is that conditioning process? Is it hand rubbing that Rawhide's on, or what does that process look like?
So when I've got a brand new rope and I'm going to break it in to go use it, I'm going to take that and I'm going to string it up on the fence. And I'm not trying to stretch the rope. I'm just kind of getting it hung up from end to end where it's kind of hanging by its own weight. And then I'm going to take that ray holes. I'm going to put a heavy coat of that on there. And I'm going to let that get warm in the sun. After it's had a chance to warm up, I'm going to take that to my log or a board, like you said, that's got several holes drilled in it, several inches apart, each one. I'm going to put my Rieta through probably 3 holes to begin with, and I'm going to pull it back and forth through there from end to end. Once it's feeling a little bit more limber, I might go through another hole. You can go through, as many, up to 6 holes if you want to. I'm just trying to get the rope to be less like a coil spring and more something that you can handle when you're actually out there roping. And I typically don't do a lot of break-in with them. I just want to get them to where they're going to be manageable to rope with, and they're not just going to be throwing hooeys and kinks at me the whole time. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start roping cattle with them. The thing about Rietas is when they're brand new like that, they definitely can throw a lot of those kinks at you because they don't have a lay to them. They're braided straight. So that just kind of lends itself to really throwing those hooeys back over your hands and stuff when you're trying to rope with them when they're brand new. So you just want to break them in just enough to where you kind of get that manageable. One of the things people say about Rietas is they don't burn, they bite. So they won't burn your hands like a poly rope or a nylon rope will, but they'll throw one of those hooeys up over your hand there if you're not careful.
Sure. Yeah. And so the lay that you're talking about would be the left-hand braid or the right-hand braid that would come
Correct.
with a normal, 3/8 or whatever, 9.5 millimeter rope, right?
Yep.
And then being braided flat, does that mean that rawhide Rietas are ambidextrous?
They can be. Yep. You can use them with, whether you're a right or a left-handed roper, that doesn't make any difference for the process of braiding them. So you can definitely use them like that. They will get trained kind of if if you've been roping with one right-handed a lot, they're going to be kind of trained that direction. And so if you get one of those that's been used some as a left-handed roper, you probably want to switch ends with it or something. That way you can just kind of retrain it that way.
Sure. And does it go without saying rawhide Rieta, rawhide Hondo? Is that Hondo? You tell me what your geographical preference is.
I have people all the time. I grew up calling them Hondas, just like the car. I don't know why that's what they're called, but that's what I call them. People still give me heck in the comments about it's not Honda, it's Hondu or whatever. But to me, it's geographical, like you said. Whatever you grew up calling them is what you ought to do. But I prefer the Honda myself on a rawhide Rieta. I think that's the way to go. They balance well, and it's a natural material with a natural material. I've seen all kinds of things. I've seen people with a metal Honda on them and whatever, but I personally.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know that I've ever seen one with anything but a rawhide Honda on it, but yeah, that is. I grew up calling them Hondus. I've heard everything: Hondo, Hondu, Honda. It just who knows? It's your neighborhood. And
that's right.
Most of the time, everybody calls it the same thing in a given neighborhood, but sometimes there's some variation too. So, and I guess that makes sense to me as far as natural material on natural material. Talk to me about the durability. Are these generational things? Are these things that can be handed down from generation to generation, or are they more? This is going to be something that, hey, we're going to use it, and then it's going to get wore out, and we'll have to make another one.
Rawhide can certainly be a generational thing. If it's cared for well and you use it, but you don't abuse it, you can absolutely, when I make a piece, a pair of reins, for example, or a hackamore, I'm looking 100 years down the road for that piece. I don't put anything underneath my braids like tape or something like that could break down over time. I don't use anything but good quality leather and rawhide underneath those buttons for the longevity of it. And, the amount of time that can last is infinite if it's cared for well. Now, obviously, there's such a thing as, just like a good saddle. You used it and you wore it out. And that's not a bad thing either, I don't think. I think that's a blessing to be able to wear out a good piece of gear like that. But it depends on the use and how it's cared for more than anything.
Yeah, when the tree's showing through the fenders, it might be time to think about a new one, right?
Might be time for an upgrade then. So.
Yeah, which is a hat tip to you, buddy. Yeah. I've been well touring the King Ropes, making the pilgrimage to the King Ropes Saddle Museum. King Saddle
Oh yeah.
Museum is
Yep.
you see some saddles in there that they live up to the Chris Ledoux song. He's worn a lot of leather off the tree.
Yeah, they've had a few miles in them for sure. That's a cool place in there. We were in
Yeah.
there last September.
Yep. Yep. We've been there a few times in the last couple of years, and we went to the Dave Stamey concert. It was the day after my birthday here 2 years ago, and so we went to the Dave Stamey concert, and then of course had a little time to kill, so we went and took in the King Saddlery Museum as a family, and
Oh, very
yep,
cool.
good times. Lots of history in there. It's fun to see all the different stuff. So
Yeah.
how would you tell somebody to get started? Somebody wants to, follow in your footsteps and get started in the trade. What would you say? What are the things they need to start thinking about?
The place to start is just to begin. I think that holds a lot of people back. They're not quite sure how to get started. So to just kind of dispel that mystery a little bit, get some parachute cord or something like that and just start learning the buttons and the braids. There's all kinds of resources out there for that these days. You can get one of my online courses. You can come to an in-person class and you can see the whole process and I'll take you through it. Or, there's any number of resources that are available out there now. Whereas when I got started, there really wasn't. There was one or two videos that were pretty obscure and it was hard to see what the moves that the guy was making and so forth. But today it's so easy to get started because the information is high quality and there's a lot of it. And that's the place to start. Just begin. You can get on my social media. You can learn a lot of the different buttons and the braids, the simpler stuff right there, and just the short form content. When you're ready to jump up and start making projects, grab one of my online courses and you can start making, actual pieces of braided gear. I think one of the best projects to make if you want to get started with rawhide at first is rawhide Hondas. That's a great first project because it's smaller, but yet you get to practice all the different things within that one project. You're cutting a string, which is a larger string, so it's easier to cut. You're learning how to temper that rawhide and manipulate that moisture content so that you can braid with it. You get to do a 4-strand braid and an 8 braid. You get to tie a button on the end too. So there's a lot of great things that you can practice within that one smaller project before you then try to handle larger amounts of string for a regatta or even a hackamore or something like that.
Is there one project or product that you make that stands out as far as margin or profitability from that perspective?
I don't think so. I think they're all pretty even. I really, as far as what I like to do, I like to braid regattas. But aside from that, I love smaller projects. I don't know why. I think my attention span is a little bit lacking sometimes, and so if I can just sit down and make a bracelet, I really like making bracelets. I make a ton of those just with kangaroo leather, and being able to just sit down, make that thing from start to finish, and just pull up the braids really nice and even, just make them nice. That really is very satisfying to me. Maybe more so than kind of a project that just takes you weeks and weeks and different stages to really complete. So that's what I really enjoy doing the most, I think.
And you've mentioned a couple of times the kangaroo leather. As far as I know, not a lot of kangaroos in Missouri. So
Definitely not.
so you're sourcing that from Australia, I'm guessing,
Mhm.
or are there kangaroo ranches where it's like the hide trade? They're growing
As
kangaroos.
far as I know, it all comes from wild kangaroos in Australia, but
Is
I
that
get it from Hardkey Leather in Texas is my current supplier for that.
sure? Is that a common, or has that been a long-standing practice of, you mentioned the hackmores and the uh, bracelets and stuff. Has that been a long-standing practice of using kangaroo leather on those things, or is that a newer innovation?
I think it's been popular for quite some time. Leather hackamores, especially, using Latigo or something like that, has been popular for a long time. I just like the kangaroo because it's such a high quality leather. It's one of the best leathers that you can get, in my opinion. It has a lot of strength in it for how thin it is, and it just braids up really nice and makes really nice projects. the other thing I like about braiding with it is you don't have to worry about the moisture content of it like you do with rawhide. So, I'm simultaneously working on a quirt that's going to go to a show, and this is a weeks long multi-level project. So then being able to just pick up a few strings of kangaroo and braid a bracelet start to finish and it's done, in a little while is satisfying because of that. It kind of allows you to relax a little bit, I think, instead of having to just get every little detail of that moisture content preparation correct before you can braid.
And will those, will hackamores and quirts and those kinds of things, will they be a mix of kangaroo leather and rawhide? Or will it be
They certainly
rawhide
can be.
parts? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really common. You'll see, a rawhide body with kangaroo buttons or vice versa on something. I don't do a lot of that. I tend to kind of stick with one material. I don't know why. That's just my personal preference, I suppose, but it's definitely common.
So I don't know what the technical term is, but on the back of a hackmore, there's a large, is that called a button then? The large ball at the back of a hackmore?
The heel knot is what we would call that. Yep.
Okay, so the heel knot is on yours. Those would be kangaroo also? That heel knot would be kangaroo also?
They would. Yep.
Okay. So I always just envisioned that being harder and being harder because it was rawhide, but that's inaccurate, right?
Well, that has more to do, I think, with what's kind of underneath it.
Okay.
If you have, so underneath that foundation for that button, though the bases of your hackamore are brought together right there. And then they are put together through a process of tying a rawhide button around there. And then you take all those strings in the body and kind of loop them back through each other. And it creates a really strong bond between the bodies of your hackamore right there. But then you have to build that up further to make it a nice shape and give it some size before you tie that braided knot over it. And I do that by adding skirting leather and kangaroo leather, gluing that around there, and then taking that to the belt sander and sanding that to where it's a nice, consistent, uniform shape, making sure that everything's 100% symmetrical before I actually braid over it. Now, you can skip a lot of that process if you just take a roll of electrical tape and just put wrap after wrap of tape around there before you braid over that. So in that case, it would be kind of spongy. But if you've built that up really nice with layers of skirting leather or whatever, it's going to be nice and firm, and you're still going to have that durability in it.
Sure. Very good. So kind of talk to me about just your personal gear preferences on a finished bridle horse from, like I said earlier, but this is more just your preferences: headstall, bit, reins, saddle, all that kind of stuff. What's your ideal?
Well, for me, I like to ride a Wade saddle. I think that's just the best fit for this style of roping myself. Having your saddle where it fits down closer to your horse, I think lessens that leverage on your horse's back and just makes them more comfortable, which makes me more comfortable throughout the day. I like to ride my horses in the bridle if I can, so I like to have a nice pair of bridle reins. I've found that if I buy gear from my friends who braid, I'm likely to hang on to it. And so the reins that I'm using are not mine. They're made by somebody else. And the Rieta that I've been using this last couple of years is made by somebody else, because all the ones that I make, I end up selling them. And so I put together kind of a collection of stuff made by other makers whom I really like and respect. And headstalls, I haven't made a lot of braided headstalls. I've seen some that I thought were really cool, but they've never really just grabbed me. I like a headstall that's just a nice, clean look, nothing bulky about it. Nice silver on that, leading down to your silver spade bit. So that's what I prefer.
Sure. And rein chains, right? From the spade bit to the reins.
I'm a big fan of rein chains. I know that's gotten really popular in the cow horse world and show world to not have rein chains. And most of the reins that I end up making and sending out the door are long so that you don't need rein chains. But I like them. I love the way that they look. I like the way that the reins hang on them and they swing. I just think it's really classy and it's more traditional. So I prefer that.
And it goes along with the tradition because it provides more weight for the earlier signal. Is that accurate?
In my opinion, it does. I think that's a little bit controversial. I think there's a lot of people that tell you the old timers did that so they didn't get their rawhide wet when their horse was getting a drink. And that's certainly true. I mean, they're not lying. But, so I think there's that benefit to it. But I do think that there's something to the weight of them as well that just kind of gives a pre-signal to the bridle bits that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it can be both, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
And,
I think they're very practical for me. So
right. To quote the meme, why not both? So
that's right.
yeah, very good. What else? What are some things, that you would just think, hey, this should be included in a conversation about rawhide, braiding, all that? What are some things we've kind of left on the table here today?
If you're interested in braiding rawhide or just braiding in general, like I said, just get started. That's, for me, I've taken up some different hobbies here as I've gotten older. And it's kind of put me on the other side of these things a little bit, because when you're starting something brand new, for me, it was fly fishing most recently. I started doing that. I always wanted to do it, but I never had anybody to teach me. Nobody. And so I'm going on vacation to Colorado and I'm just like, I want to do this. So I've got to walk into the fly shop and just look like, I'm some dummy from Kansas. I don't know anything about this, but it's like, will you help me? And so it really put me on the other side of that. And I think people often reach out with a bit of trepidation when they want to start. They want to ask me questions through my social media or an email or whatever. And reach out. I just do it. It's a ton of fun, and I'm more than happy to help any way that I can. Phone calls or messages or emails, whatever you need to do to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you out any way that I can. Get started with the braiding. I've got lots of online courses and lots of in-person classes. You can find those on my website if you want to come to one of those or come to one of the events that I'm at and meet me and ask questions. I'm more than happy to visit with you about that as well. But just don't be afraid. Just jump in and get started. It's a good time.
Yeah, my experience with the Working Cows podcast is proof that you can make a living out of asking dumb questions. So just
I love that. There you go.
Asking the first dumb question.
There you go. That's great.
Yeah, very good.
You got to kind of embrace the cringe a little bit, I think, is one way to look at it. Yeah. When I really started leaning into social media, it's like I still don't just enjoy making the videos. It's not always the greatest to like put yourself out there that way, but I enjoy helping people, and it's a great way to do that. But you just kind of got to embrace the cringe a little bit, and yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Yep. No, that is absolutely true. I was thinking while you were talking about learning to fly fish, I said, just walk into the fly shop with your cowboy hat on. That'll help break the ice that you don't know what you're doing and you don't know what you're talking about. And
yeah, definitely.
So yeah, if you walk in there, and you look like a fly fisherman, then you've already set yourself up to try and keep up appearances. Just don't even start there, right?
Yeah. Well, you see that a lot too in all walks of life, I feel.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I went to this is a lifetime ago. I went to a paintball tournament one time in Chicago and I walked up to the wrong group to start. And one of the guys like, oh, we got a ringer. So yeah. But anyways, that's another story for another time. So Scott, where can people get a hold of you? Of course, social media, but how would they go about tracking down your courses and some of that?
You bet. So you can get in touch with me through my website, or of course find my courses through scottgorerawhide.com. Or if you're interested in roping with Riettas or coming to a roping clinic, my roping website is riettaroping.com. Of course, my full clinic schedule and workshop schedule is on there as well. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and you can find my online courses through my websites, but also their website is bamaker.school is where I host my courses through. And that's an incredible website for all different Western trades. So if you're interested in learning a Western trade, definitely check them out. It's a great resource.
Just give me a brief rundown of your Rieta roping school. What are the talk me through the format, the length, and all those kinds of things.
So my Rieta roping videos they're hosted through Patreon. Again, you can find that through my website as well. I just post videos about how to throw different shots, preparing your horse for roping, and general horsemanship and stockmanship things. I love teaching people how to do the things that I love to do. And my roping clinics, you can find my schedule there. I love teaching the roping clinics in person. I think it's a great time to just get together with a group of people who are interested in improving their roping, and we go through all the different shots and there again, how to prepare your horse, how to position the cattle and work together as a group to position those cattle for, roping in a low stress manner. And that's something that I really enjoy doing as well.
And how long are those schools usually?
Normally we're 2 days on those, occasionally do a 3-day, but most of the time it's just kind of a Saturday, Sunday thing. If anybody's interested in hosting one in their area, feel free to reach out to me and we'll chat about it.
And people bring their own horse and all that?
Yep. You bring your own horse. Cattle are usually provided on site. Usually do this at like an indoor or an outdoor arena type of situation. Auditors are always welcome as well. So if you don't have your own horse or you're just curious and want to see what it's like, feel free to come by and audit. And again, make sure you say hello.
Yeah, very good. Scott, thanks for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Very good stuff there with Scott. Really appreciate his passion for what he's doing and the way that he has turned it into a business and something that is able to help and sustain his family. So I really appreciated that conversation. I thought I had an episode ready to go with Malcolm McLean from Ranch Hacks. And when I went back to download the files to start working on getting them ready to release, there still was a problem with the recording. So if those problems are fixed, I will release that episode. If not, I will release a different episode. But I look forward to sharing another episode with you coming your way real soon on the Working Cows podcast.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.